TVU political analyst Brian Sobel, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Well, history in the making. You think about the Korean War in the early 1950s, still no peaceful resolution of the Korean War, and all these years later, grandfather, father, now the son running Korea and running it as despots, and today meeting with the U.S. president. It's a huge historic day.
But we don't anticipate any major announcements coming out of this summit.
I would caution people not to overthink this in terms of there's going to be some wide-ranging agreement. I think, in fact, this was an opportunity for two people from two different parts of the world, two different ideologies, coming together and trying to size the other person up and deciding whether they can work some things out.
Well, that brings me to our next question here. As they're discussing what potentially could be next here in this nuclear summit that's underway right now, when can we expect to hear something or see something? Are we talking weeks? Are we talking months or years?
Sooner than weeks. I often say in these kinds of deals they'll want to come out with maybe something that indicates they got along, some minor agreement. But the two working groups will be together trying to come up with a much greater agreement at this point.
Well, they're shaking hands, they're smiling, and we don't know what was said behind closed doors, at least not yet. But what do you make of their demeanors?
So far, so good. I think mostly this is stuff that's fairly planned, where they walk. I noticed that the president reached out and touched the Korean dictator.
See right there.
Yes, and all this stuff has been discussed. This doesn't happen by chance, and same with what will be discussed behind the scenes. This has all been worked out. Much of this has been going on behind the scenes, really working up to the summit. Hours and hours of work between North Korean diplomats and American diplomats.
Let's talk about the sanctions that are on North Korea right now. What do you think are some of the more likely sanctions they want to see lifted right away, because they don't have very many things in terms of imports coming to that country right now that can keep them propped up. They're looking for that.
Right. Well, what they need is oil and things that can help their economy actually just survive, some foodstuffs and other things. These sanctions, although they don't touch food per se, everything is just closed down on them, their access to the world. And the restrictions are now as tight as they have ever been in the history of our relationship with North Korea. And one would argue that some of that has driven this young dictator to the table.
And people are calling this a good first step. Do you anticipate many more meetings between these two leaders?
We'll see how they get along, and we'll see mainly how the diplomats from the North Korean side and the American side get along behind the scenes. That's really where it's going to happen. These two leaders actually met for a little less time than I thought they might. You know, because by the time you go through interpreters and everything else, you don't get a whole lot done. And so, but having said that, great first meeting. Now it's turned over to the diplomats. But again, look for some minor things maybe coming out of this.
Trickling out over the next few days or so.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. President Trump saying just a short time ago that his one-on-one meeting with Kim was, quote, very, very good. And they said he had an excellent relationship with Kim Jong-un there. So we'll see how things pan out over the next few days.
Well, he's the kind of guy that, you know, claims to know how to negotiate. And he said he would be able to size him up very quickly in terms of his ability to negotiate with him. We'll see.
Political analyst Brian Sobel, thank you.
You're very welcome.